Alright, YouTube, as I've pointed out before, when the ACLU gets on the case of the federal government while a Democrat administration is in charge, you know that there are some unpopular things going on. There's a link in the description to yet another petition that can be signed. The ACLU is backing what's called the Surveillance State Repeal Act. Of course, Representative Holt, who himself is a Democrat, is the one proposing this. I find it interesting. And here's how you know that people's general antsiness about the NSA and the surveillance has taken a turn for the worse, and how you know that the Congress is kind of trying to save their own skin. Some of these people probably genuinely are concerned about these things. Others are just getting on board. You know, they may have originally supported it. Of course, the Patriot Act's own author is against most of what's going on, and yesterday the Amash Amendment was narrowly defeated. I think it was something like 10 votes. It was like if they had gotten 7 more votes, it would have passed and defunded the part of the NSA that's responsible for the domestic surveillance of phones and things. And of course, now we know the government is also trying to get the master encryption keys to the passwords to Facebook and YouTube and all of these other sites. Essentially, if that goes through and we don't do something about this, there is no such thing as web privacy anymore. Because there are several problems, and I've pointed this out. Even if the NSA doesn't misuse this power, all a hacker has to do is, or a whistleblower, or someone who gets into the NSA that maybe they shouldn't have hired, all they have to do is hack something. It's simple to these people. Who do you think that they're hiring for these things in the first place? What happens if the Chinese hack into these systems and get a hold of, maybe 500 million passwords? What could they do with this? There are non-profits that use YouTube and Facebook. There are, veterans organizations. There are all sorts of things. They can get a running list of members. They can get their addresses. They can get their locations. They can see, what their favorite food is. So even if you trust the government with this power, then you also have to trust a bureau that is not technically part of the government, the NSA, with this info, and then you've got to trust that they actually have systems in place that are so wonderful that they can't possibly be hacked, which we know is impossible. The CIA and the FBI lose laptops and servers and lists of passwords and thumb drives and everything on a daily basis almost. What makes the NSA any different? So Holt is trying to essentially get rid of this surveillance state. Now, it's a rather draconian act that I support completely. It would do away with the Patriot Act. It would do away with the FISA courts. It would do away with, in large part, the existence of the NSA. You couldn't ask for a better bill to protect our privacy if this does pass. The Amash Amendment was narrowly defeated. Most of its supporters will probably be on with this bill as well, and it's bipartisan again. As with the Amash Amendment, a Democrat and a Republican got together to author that, and it almost passed, and it had support from every single state. Here in Vermont, our one representative, because we're so fucking small, we only have one, he voted for the Amash Amendment, which means I will be voting for him in the next election. I believe he is being primaried. Of course, it didn't go through the Senate, so I don't know. I hate Patrick Leahy. He's a complete asshole and the author of SOPA, so he won't get my vote no matter who runs against him. And Sanders, of course, he's a decent dude. He has some weird ideas, but he's marginally honest, so I guess I'll vote for him too. But this Surveillance State Repeal Act is an excellent idea. This goes even further than the Amash bill. Now, of course, there was also the Pompey bill that was voted on right before the Amash bill that went through, and I believe that was, I believe that also had to do with the NSA, with their allocation of funds and their oversight. And you had people complaining that the NSA was giving very detail-lacking small reports on their activities. Of course, I think part of this is this. I think Congress feels a little bit shafted right now. A lot of the people in Congress who aren't in the upper echelon, the John McCains and people like that, the John McCains, the John Boehners, the Nancy Pelosi's, I think they feel kind of shortchanged. The reason that is that these people, of course, a lot of them date to the Patriot Act days, and they put it through. The Patriot Act never had a problem passing. because they were told, and one of the representatives actually brought this up, that it was necessary for security. And as the Amash Amendment backers tried to point out, the amendment wouldn't have reduced their ability to go after people suspected of terrorism. It just means that you can't collect the blanket data of every American, which isn't necessary. It's a waste of funds. The Republicans should be up in arms about this program because it's spending billions of taxpayer dollars on something which is negligible at best in its usefulness, rather than actually targeting people who are subject to an investigation after getting a warrant, which is the way the law is supposed to work in this country. They're simply saying, well, we'll take everything and then we'll build suspicion against these people. So essentially, if you're an American citizen right now and you have a friend in Saudi Arabia, your metadata's probably been red listed, and your phone calls have probably been gone through line by line. Somebody has probably listened already to every recorded phone call that you have made in the last 10 years. That should scare you. That should be something that is concerning. I've talked to people in Germany who are warning us quite clearly. This is sort of what happened before Germany went to Soviet rule. Before the communists took over, and you had the secret police, and you had the wall, and you had the strict immigration and emigration policy, and you had people trying to use zip lines to cross the wall because life was so terrible and everything fell to shit. They're warning us. And they're not doing it because, haha, those stupid Americans. This time they're actually warning us out of the goodness of their hearts because they understand what's happening over here is not a good thing to do. Why don't we ask people who survived East Germany how greatly the surveillance state worked there? Why don't we ask some people who survived the Holocaust about how gloriously safe that they felt in the police surveillance state there? You won't find many people who have actually gone through one of these scenarios who supports it, unless they were on the giving end rather than the larger receiving end of the dick up the ass of the people involved. You won't find many people who support him because largely people get afraid, and this is the case with World War II, the Cold War, this is the case with every despotic regime that's ever happened. People get afraid. They get told, well, we're being attacked, we've got to do something. Give us some freedom, we'll give you more security. People are like, oh, I'll be safe now. Only then the problem is they're safe against external threats, now they're not safe against their own government. That's the way it works. So people should be supporting this. Again, there's a link in the description. You should put, the ACLU isn't known for blanket collecting data on people either, so you can probably trust them with your name and your zip code, which is all you have to fucking put in there. Credo is in on this. A bunch of groups are already in on this, and actually I'm looking at some of the news, and it was just posted yesterday, and it's spreading around quite quickly. If we can get enough public support, because the Amash Amendment was kind of an 11th hour thing, most of the public never heard about it, probably still doesn't understand it existed. The idea is, if you go early enough into something like this and raise public awareness and get enough signatures, it starts to scare the Congress people. Remember SOPA. SOPA was expected to pass by a large margin. And in a very short amount of time, about 2 weeks, the American people and a bunch of people from other countries, and other people in other countries can sign this too, poured in like a swarm, got 16 million signatures, and all of a sudden support for it basically went out the window and it never even got voted on. Because they knew it wouldn't pass at that point. Because the Congress people ultimately, especially right now, we're heading towards the next congressional elections. All these people that are being primaried can be convinced to vote for this quite easily. It wouldn't take that much effort. These people aren't used to getting large numbers of signatures, emails, and phone calls. Call your representatives. Call the person who represents your district, number one. Send emails off to the rest of them in your state, number two. And sign the petition. It's really not that difficult. It doesn't take very long, and it is effective. They honestly do listen to their constituents because they know less than 1% of the population that votes for them is ever going to sign a petition. So if the petition numbers start creeping up towards that threshold, they start getting very worried. because they realize that for everyone who signed it, there are 10 other people who want them to vote the same way and just didn't take the time to sign it. They get worried. So this is our chance to put the screws to Congress and tell them to grow a fucking spine. The Democrats are already on the side of this bill. All we've got to do is win over some of the Republicans and some of the fence-sitting Democrats, and we've got it. And then everyone can go home sleeping soundly after this is voted on, knowing the Patriot Act is finally dead. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriot Act's author supported this one too, which is beyond funny. It's beyond any level of hilarity you can possibly think of, that the person who helped design this whole mess in the first place is now against it, because even he thinks it's gone too far. So sign the petition, look up your representatives, tell them to vote for the Surveillance State Repeal Act by Holt. Do it. Because it's going to take millions of people working together to get it passed, but if it passes, we're going to save billions of dollars a year. The NSA will finally be defunct. I wish we could just get rid of it. Maybe that'll happen too. It's all about putting pressure on Congress, and again, Obama would have to sign off, but if the representatives vote for it, if the Senate votes for it, if the people support it, and Obama vetoes it, what do you think's going to happen to Obama's public support? He won't be able to get anything passed for the rest of his presidency. He'll become complete lame duck. And absolutely nothing will happen from his administration, and he'll crash and burn like the failure he is. So, the Republicans should really get on board. I don't know why they didn't support the Amash bill. And the Democrats should do it too, because guess what? Not many Democrats are going to win re-election if Obama keeps fucking with things. And people have come to the realization that yes, the Patriot Act started with the Republicans, and it's been expanded and continued by the Democrats, hence why I no longer support either party. It would take quite a bit to make me vote for a Democrat or a Republican at this point. Peter Welch gets an exception simply because he voted for the Amash Amendment. That's where my loyalties will lie, is with the government respecting people's actual privacy. Peace out.